If you grew up anywhere near a traditional church, you were handed the story of the prodigal son as a moral warning. You were taught that it's a tale about a rebellious kid who makes bad life choices, wastes his dad's money, hits rock bottom in a pigsty, and has to crawl back home to beg for mercy and forgiveness from an external authority. For decades, that story was weaponized to keep us quiet. It was a subtle psychological threat. Don't you dare wander off. Don't question the system, because if you try to live life on your own terms, you'll end up ruined. But what if that story was never a moral warning about sin at all? What if it's the exact opposite? What if it's an ancient ascended master level blueprint for what it actually looks like to wake up, pull your energy out of the social matrix, and survive the terrifying, beautiful process of choosing yourself? To understand why this story hits so hard, first we have to talk about what energy actually is. You aren't just a physical organism operating in a vacuum. Through the lens of quantum systems biology, energy is literal bioelectricity drawn directly from the plasma and quantum field of the unified grid into your biological vessel. It is the fuel of reality itself. When we are young, we are handed a script by our families, our culture, and our social structures. And because we're trained to survive, our brains prune our neuropathways into literal closed loops. Think of it like a circuit board. The brain builds rigid, over-pruned pathways that keep your bioelectricity trapped inside your head, circling the exact same repetitive thoughts, survival scripts, and behavioral loops. You are literally wired to keep your own energy contained, predictable, and compliant. But let's look at how the story actually starts, because this is the ignition point. The younger son walks up to his father and says, "Give me my share of the estate." In the ancient world, that was culturally radioactive, but think about what an inheritance actually represents on a deeper level. It's your life force, your actual bioelectricity. The moment a person begins to wake up, even before they have the vocabulary for it, an internal demand rises from the depths of their soul. Give me my portion. Give me my energy back. It's the first sovereign refusal to keep funding a closed loop. You pull your energy out of the collective expectations, the family obligations, and the compliance buckets. You are checking out of the social matrix. So he takes his inheritance and leaves for a distant country. And what does he do? What happens when someone breaks free from a lifetime of high control programming? You don't automatically know how to be sovereign. You've been trained your whole life to be a dependent. You've been running someone else's closed loops. So when you finally get your energy back, what do most people do? They try to find freedom by running outward. They chase external validation. They overcompensate, or they accidentally try to recreate the exact same extractive structures in a new environment, just with different masters. You take your precious bioelectricity and hand it over to whatever distraction or hustle promises to make you feel free. And eventually, a famine hits. You run out of resources. You hit a brick wall. That famine isn't a magical curse sent by an angry god. That famine is an energy rock bottom. It is the exact moment a human being's battery bottoms out as low as it can get without dying. It's the inevitable mathematical endpoint of trying to find freedom outside of yourself while still carrying your old people-pleasing survival brain closed loops. You left the toxic job, you left the church, you changed your external life, but you brought your conditioned, over-pruned brain right along with you. You end up feeding pigs. You're eating cultural slop, taking on high entropy, chaotic, physiological stress, what people call low vibration, but in plain terms is just a nervous system firing on erratic, high friction, bioelectrical static that burns out your cells, running your internal battery down to zero and wondering why you still feel entirely empty even though you escaped. Then comes the turning point, the text says something fascinating. It doesn't say when he remembered the church's rules or when he decided to go apologize to the Father. It says when he came to himself. That's the exact moment the spell breaks. That is the flash of clarity where you look around the pigsty, covered in the mud of your own exhaustion, and realize, what am I doing? Why am I starving myself to feed a system that doesn't care if I live or die? Modern neuroscience calls this de-pruning. As children, our brains run on a massive floodlight of awareness potential. Billions of neuron connections open to everything. But social conditioning forces us to prune those connections down into rigid, hyper-efficient superhighways. When you come to himself, your brain experiences a massive high-frequency awareness shift. It forces your neural network's energy to press up against the edges of those pruned highways and to move past them to start de-pruning. It begins breaking the imposed survival loops so that you can free up that last bit of energy you have left, enabling your body to start receiving more of the energy directly from the unified field of conscious awareness that it requires to stay alive and kick off the recovery process. Growing up, we weren't necessarily handed a manual on how to awaken. In fact, the whole concept was often subtly fenced off as off limits or later flattened out into modern political noise. But what is actually happening in the biology is entirely real, completely physical, and has nothing to do with woo-woo buzzwords. This is where the ancient Hermetic maxim, as within, so without, meets hard system biology. Awakening isn't some mystical escape from reality. It is the radical act of bringing the two halves of your brain and your mind, body, and soul out of internal civil war and into unified coherence. When you heal the split inside your own operating system, you realize that your individual awareness isn't a sealed off room. It's an extension of the larger field. As you integrate your own internal fractures, you stop broadcasting the frantic, static survival. You become a steady, coherent signal. When your mind begins to receive that much peace and sovereignty, your body doesn't know how to experience it. It doesn't trust safety yet. It spent decades bracing, clenching, and holding trauma in your fascia, tension in specific places in your body, and your nervous system. When you finally decide to drop the armor and claim your authority, your body has to burn through massive amounts of metabolic fuel to rewrite its own hardware. You get all sorts of physical symptoms, sometimes as real and tangible as hot flashes, chills, heavy sweating, and painful tension in specific regions where you are most braced, or even sudden muscle spasms, repetitive eye twitches, and full body micro jolts as your nervous system literally reorganizes and your muscles relearn how to process a higher level of electrical flow. When you begin to deeply expand much further beyond the original framework, you can feel like you're being mildly electrocuted by your own awakening. That sweat and pain is not a disease. That is your biological vessel acting as a thermal exhaust system while you sweat out the old version of you who kept herself small to keep the peace while relearning its innate design and how to hold that much current directly from source, which is actually supporting your true state of being. And then, of course, there's the older brother. Many of us were taught in church to criticize the older brother for being judgmental, for standing outside, angry, and refusing to welcome the sinner back in. But let's look at what the older brother is actually doing. He followed every single rule. He white-knuckled his own misery, sacrificed his desires, and played the good, obedient son for his entire life. And when his brother comes home, instead of celebrating freedom, the older brother flies into a rage. From the perspective of the social matrix, the older brother represents the institutional mind. the part of the system that demands absolute conformity. And while traditional churches often point the finger at the older brother as the bad guy, the system itself often breeds him. Why? Because watching someone else wake up and claim sovereign freedom without earning it through the same institutional suffering exposes a terrifying truth. They didn't have to suffer it either. They chose the cage. And seeing you outside of it, free, without needing a permission slip, creates a profound dissonance for anyone still white-knuckling the rules. Listen to what the father says to the older brother at the very end of the story. "Son, you are always with me, and all that is mine is yours." Read that again. The father isn't withholding anything. The older brother's inheritance was already his the entire time. He was just locking himself away from it inside his own rigid, self-imposed, closed loops of compliance. When the son finally decides to return home, notice what the father does. He isn't waiting in judgment. He's just standing there, watching for him, ready. The moment he sees him, he runs out, throws his arms around him, and restores him completely. If the father in the story represents God or Source, it isn't an external king sitting on a throne keeping a ledger of your mistakes. It is the base frequency of the unified field. Reality is non-local, and you and I are biological antennas. An antenna doesn't have to beg a radio tower for permission to pick up the signal. It just has to stop blocking it with static. When your brain de-prunes, when your neural pathways stop looping the same old survival loops, and when your body drops its physical bracing, your antenna clears. You literally pull more bioelectricity from the field into your physical vessel, which gives your brain more energy to de-prune further, a self-sustaining engine of liberation. Look at the symbolic language of how the father restores him. The best robe, a ring on his hand, shoes on his feet, and a feast. That isn't just a party. That is the ancient esoteric code for absolute manifestation power. It is what happens when your biological vessel is fully cleared of static and reconnects to the infinite current of Source. As the text says, "For my son was dead. His battery was completely flat, and is alive again. He was lost to himself, but now he is found," and the celebration begins. The moment you command your nervous system to stand down from its hyper-vigilant protection of that outer system, drop its armor, and choose yourself, the static begins to clear. The hero begins the walk home to the Source frequency, returning to more of who you truly are than you have ever had access to in your life. There's still a long path back, but you aren't coming back to an institution. You are coming back to you.